So a bit of a vulnerable one today, because this is something that has been a part of my whole life and is still something that I experience day to day, because relationships are a part of being human. We only exist to relate to each other. And so social anxiety is something that I've experienced my whole life since I can remember, and was always called the shy one, the quiet one. And it comes back to these survival strategies that I've talked about, this default programming that we get when we're younger. If you want to hear more about that, go have a look at some of my previous videos, but also these prisons that we're in about who we think we are and the stories we tell ourselves about who we believe we are. And so growing up, I didn't understand this then, but I have come to a point now in my life where I pretty much have gone from being in a state of anxiety my whole life to being pretty much relatively anxiety free most of the time, which is an incredible change. And that is really from breaking out of those prisons, understanding that I am not the stories, I'm not who my mind and ego thinks it is. I'm not my default programming, and slowly reprogramming these patterns and these behaviors and my identity. But it hasn't been an easy process. I remember growing up just being so on edge around social situations or meeting new people or anything that was unfamiliar to me. And it wasn't because bad things would happen to me when I would go into social situations, or anything really traumatic that I can remember has happened to me. But what I've come to understand in recent times is it's come from this place of who I am is inherently wrong or bad or broken. And that story can be different for everyone, but for me, it's when we're growing up and something happens, something that hurts us, we perceive it in a way that hurts us. We can't understand as kids. We rely on our caregivers so much that we can't understand that what they did might be the cause of the problem. So instead, we start to believe a story that we're the ones that are broken or wrong, or whatever the story is, or bad. And this happens to everyone. This is not blaming anyone. It's just how humans grow and learn to survive. And for me, I learned that who I was, there was something wrong with that. I learned this statement: if I am me, something bad will happen. And so that's where I kind of formed these survival patterns of hiding and playing small and performing. I think for a long time, social situations carried such weight because I knew I'd have to go in there and pretend and perform, because I learned that if I was me, I had this belief, if I was me, something bad would happen, or there is something inherently wrong with me. And the reason as kids we do that is because if something is wrong with the adult or the caregiver, then we would die. We wouldn't survive. We rely on the caregiver to survive, or the adult or whoever it is to survive. So we inherently place this, we do this all as humans. We say we are the ones that are broken, and it creates this prison of who we think we are and what is wrong with us. And one of my prisons was that who I am is inherently wrong. And so the strategies to survive that became about performance. It became about pretending, being someone else. And so social situations for me were unfamiliar, and I would just go into them perceiving, because my story was that who I am is wrong and bad, then I perceived the world that way. So I would go into social situations and just assume that no one liked me, that people were threats, that they weren't, no matter what they did, I was perceiving it that way. And because of that, because my strategy was to hide, play small, and perform the perfectionism. So going into those situations just felt like such a weight. And again, my strategy was to avoid them as much as possible. And the problem with that is just like the golden algorithm of that is, as soon as you start, because I believed that there was something wrong with me and I was avoidant and I play small and hide, then I would start to gather evidence as to why that is actually true. So going into these situations and being quiet or being the shy one who doesn't talk to anyone, then the world started to reflect to me that there was something wrong with me, because I wasn't receiving. I was even going out into social situations, but I was interpreting it as a negative experience because I couldn't be me in those situations. So the world started to mirror what I saw in myself. And so there's just so much evidence built up throughout my life as to why that's true. And that's why we call it the golden algorithm, because it just feeds itself. And that's why people that can get stuck in anxiety just spiral, because the behaviors then start to mimic the beliefs, and they just play on each other, and it spirals and spirals and spirals. And I remember alcohol being like this superpower, because for the first time in my life, I could socialize without that part of my brain making decisions to stop me from just being who I was in that moment. And that worked, of course, until it didn't, because again, that survival behavior meant that I needed to drink more and more and more over again to have that feeling. I was like chasing that feeling. It just had permission to be me. And yeah, when I drank, I didn't think I had to perform. I didn't think I had to be anyone else. I could be big, and I could actually get feedback from other people that they liked me and they enjoyed being around me. But of course, that led to me getting to a point where I would just drink so much that I wouldn't even remember going out in my late teens and early 20s. And that, of course, led to some dumb decisions. And it only worked for a while until it didn't. It was like putting on a Band-Aid and covering up the real wound. And so that's what the journey in the last few years has really been, is looking at the constraints and the stories about who I thought I was. And that's really the difference there. And the biggest thing is that still comes around is, although I'm nowhere near as anxious anymore, because I know those stories are a lie, that who I am isn't inherently broken and wrong, that I can be myself, and that I am a miracle just being alive. I understand that, no, but those young parts, that inner child still comes up quite often, and it flip-flops back and forward. And so it does come up at times. But since I've understood that, I've then been able to go into social situations and be myself and gather evidence for reasons why I could be myself. And that's really the key there, because if you're not gathering evidence for, your mind's automatically gathering evidence against, because our mind is geared for survival. It would do anything to survive. It doesn't matter if it's good for us or not. It would way rather me just not interact with anyone and hide and play small and never do what I want. Trust me, that's all it really wants. And that's why this journey, people might see, like I do the podcast or the YouTube or Instagram, they might see me being out here and telling the truth and being social and being vulnerable, but it's not easy for me. It's going against, my 25 years of programming, and then years, thousands of years of evolution that has designed us to be anxious and perceive threat and be on edge and survive. And so it's not an easy thing to be seen. And that's really what it is. I don't think people understand, is like the whole part of dissolving these constraints and limitations at the end of the day is just about being ourselves. And, Carl Jung says the journey, it is the greatest privilege. It is a privilege of a lifetime, but to become who you truly are. And I'm not fully there yet. There's still a lot of situations where my old programming comes up and I feel like I have to perform and not be myself. And it still feels like the most vulnerable thing in the world to be seen as exactly who I am in this moment. And that's the journey for me, though, to have full acceptance of me no matter what, and to be seen fully as me, and not to hide, not to play small, but to express my gifts and my light and share that with the world. And that's truly what I want to help other people do because I get it. I know how hard it is to be surrounded by people and feel so lonely, to feel like you're never seen. And it can be a lonely, lonely world when you live like that, because there's so much evidence that your brain's gathering that there is something wrong with you all the time. The mind will do anything to prove itself right about who it thinks it is. So if we believe that we are wrong or bad or inherently broken, then it is constantly gathering that information, even if it's not really there. That's been the funniest realization for me. It's like I was the one interpreting people as a threat. People didn't actually hate me. My mind was looking to prove itself right about who it was. It would rather me just go and hide. But when I really sit with, when I'm vulnerable enough just to be myself and look in this camera and connect with people and understand there's a lot of love in this world and receive that, then that's the way that I choose to view the world. And that comes from me. We think it's external. Okay, I won't be as anxious when, all these situations, people and circumstances are perfect. But the truth is we can never control people and circumstances. But we can do the inner work, and we can look internally, and we can reprogram and dissolve these beliefs about who we think we are. And so if you're still here 12 minutes in listening to this, just know that I'm here speaking on camera, being myself, being vulnerable. And 5 years ago, I couldn't even stand up and speak in front of people. I spent my whole life mumbling. My teachers growing up just told me to open my mouth when I talked. I lived in so much fear, and just know that it is possible to be seen truly as you are. And people are trying to see you as you are. You've got to accept yourself first and look internal. If this resonated, let me know, because I love to talk about stuff. Thanks for being here.